Oh boy, have I got some information for you guys. I'm Ben Dorr, Executive Director with Minnesota Gun Rights, and the August 9th Republican primary in your district is coming up very, very shortly. This is Senate District 41, you guys. You're going to want to hear everything we have to tell you about your two candidates running in the Republican primary coming up right now. All right, guys, right out of the gate, we have two candidates. Our job at Minnesota Gun Rights, when elections come around, our job is to send out candidate questionnaires to these candidates and find out where they stand on Second Amendment issues. We're an issue advocacy organization. This is what we do. Tom Dippel and Tony Jurgens, these are the two people running. I've got surveys, I've got responses, I've got some answers, and you're going to want to hear this stuff. When you go and vote on August 9th, you know where the candidates stand. First of all, we'll just kick this right off. Tom Dippel filled out his Minnesota Gun Rights candidate survey 100% pro-gun. Not 90%, not 80%, 100% pro-gun. It's a hard charger. So we asked the candidates a series of questions, 10 to be exact, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I want to highlight some of them for you because I don't want this video to be a half an hour long. So the first thing we're going to talk about right here is red flag laws, okay? Tom Dippel has promised in writing with his John Hancock, just like the founding fathers, with his signature that he would oppose red flag laws at all costs. We know right now that the states are being bribed. We saw this. We had Lindsey Graham. We had Marco Rubio supports this stuff. Mitt Romney, a whole bunch of these rhino Republicans in the United States Senate just passed $750 million in funding to get states like Minnesota to pass red flag laws. This will allow people to take away your firearms without due process, and Tom Dippel has said he's 100% opposed and will vote no on red flag laws. That's fantastic. Next thing, stand your ground law. Everybody knows what stand your ground law is now. 37, 38 states have it now. Most of the country, California, has stand your ground law, but not Minnesota. It simply says that if you're being attacked by a violent criminal, you can use force to protect yourself without having to retreat. He said not only would he support stand your ground law, but he said he would be a chief sponsor of stand your ground law in the Minnesota Senate if he wins Senate District 41. So big news on stand your ground. Constitutional carry, same story there, okay? Constitutional carry has become law in over half of the country now. Just in the last 6 to 12 months, Georgia passed constitutional carry, Ohio passed constitutional carry, Indiana, Alabama passed constitutional carry. State after state has been passing it. We need it here in Minnesota. This is one of our top ticket issues in Minnesota Gun Rights, has been for a decade. He said that he would not only support constitutional carry, but that he would sponsor the bill and really work to push it through the Senate, which would be a good thing. Next we have, so he gets green check marks, boom, boom, boom. Fourth here, we have the assault weapons ban. They call it the assault weapons ban. It's not. It's a ban on AR-15s. It's a ban on many semi-automatic pistols. It's a ban on many shotguns. The bill that's being pushed in Congress right now would ban hundreds of different firearms, not just AR-15s. It'd ban hunting rifles, the whole gambit. And he said he would be a heck no, absolutely never over my dead body vote. Okay, so he gets a green check mark for that answer. And finally, on the bottom, we have the fact that he filled out his Minnesota Gun Rights candidate survey 100%, signed his name on it. This is where he stands on these issues. And that's important because if they won't fill out the candidate survey, then we can't hold them accountable. So the fact that he filled it out, if he doesn't do the things, well, we're gonna make sure we hold his feet to the fire, and that's important. And Tom knows that. That's why he filled it out, I think. Now here we have Tony Jurgens. Now this is a different cat altogether. Tony, you can see a bunch of red here. Well, Tony right now is a current state representative. So I've known Tony for several years at the Capitol. He's been up there for 6, 7, 8 years, long time. And here's the truth about Tony Jurgens is that he's never really done anything for gun owners. And to start off on the bottom, he refused to fill out his Minnesota gun rights candidate survey. Now, again, I just told you that politicians don't want to fill out the survey because they don't want their feet to be held to the fire. They don't want to have to fulfill any of the promises that they made when they were running for office. Tony is not different. He's no different than that. He doesn't want to fill out his Minnesota gun rights candidate survey. There's a big contingent of anti-American, anti-Minnesota, kind of liberal rhino types in the legislature, and they always refuse to fill out the Minnesota gun rights candidate survey because they don't ever push on the issues. So while the Republicans had control of the House in 2017 and 2018, we also had control of the Senate in 2017 and 2018, Tony Jurgens didn't lift a finger to pass any pro-gun bills of any kind. In fact, no pro-gun legislation made it onto the House floor for a vote at all. So Tony Jurgens, we get no response from him on the candidate survey. And now we have red flag laws. Again, we have rhino Republicans in Congress. So Liz Cheney voted for this stuff. Adam Kinzinger, Chris Jacobs from New York. They're all voting for these red flag laws in D.C. and this red flag funding. And now our states are being bribed. We don't know what Tony Jurgens is going to do now, given the state of things. On Stand Your Ground law, now, maybe he says that he supports Stand Your Ground. I don't know. He didn't fill out the candidate survey. But the fact is, when he had the votes, when Republicans had the votes in the House to pass the bill, Tony Jurgens didn't lift a single finger to pass Stand Your Ground or constitutional carry. So how are we supposed to believe that he'll do anything different if he gets to the Senate? Something to think about. And of course, the assault weapons ban. I mean, if you can't come out publicly right now as a Republican and say, oh my gosh, I'm 1,000% opposed to this stuff, mark me down as a hell no vote, are you a Republican? I don't know. It's bad news all the way across the board. Minnesota gun owners have been screwed, quite frankly, for many, many years by the politicians in St. Paul. They won't pass pro-gun bills. They don't fight for much of anything. They pass abortion funding and all kinds of crazy stuff. Re-upped Obamacare, the whole gambit, the CCAP fraud money. People like Jurgens are the ones who voted for that stuff. So if he wants to say that he's a pro-gun champion, we would say that's kind of unbelievable given where he's already been in the legislature. So it's our job to compare and contrast here. Again, Tom Dippel has filled out his survey 100% pro-gun. Tony Jurgens has been bad on a lot of these issues in his time in the legislature. And many politicians, I'm sure he probably co-sponsored some pro-gun bills at some point. A lot of politicians put their name on bills so they can tell voters, "Oh, I support this because I co-sponsored it." It's one thing to co-sponsor it. It's another thing entirely to sponsor bills and put them on the floor for votes, or if leadership won't put them on the floor for votes, legislators themselves should force votes. And that's something that Tony Jurgens has refused to do in all of the years that he has been a state representative. So a couple of things very quickly. If you see Tom Dippel on the campaign trail, thank him for being an open, obvious, honest supporter of the Second Amendment. Thank him for putting on paper where he stands on the issues and making promises in writing. It's an important thing. It's a very important thing. So thank him for being unashamedly patriotic when it comes to the Second Amendment. And then if you see Tony Jurgens I think you should tell him to apologize for being really weak on the Second Amendment, for frankly being kind of a button pusher in St. Paul. Tell him to be a fighter for gun owners. Tell him to apologize for not fighting for the Second Amendment, for being a button pusher in St. Paul. We need fighters up there. We need people who are willing to champion the Second Amendment, not just beat around the bush and be lazy when it comes to our most precious freedom. So tell him to apologize for being weak on the Second Amendment. Tell him to fill out his Minnesota Gun Rights Candidate Survey so we can hold him accountable. And share this video with your family and friends. Share it with everybody you know in Senate District 41. And when you go out to vote on the August 9th, that's coming up very soon, the August 9th primary, go out and vote pro-gun.